Getting into powder coating takes money, but should you budget more for your sandblasting equipment than you think? How important is CFM in relation to nozzle size? Before you go comparing yourself to the next guy, Jeff Taylor, our resident blasting expert, is back. In his third podcast with us, we're looking for the sweet spot to achieving the perfect air and cover the dangers of beryllium exposure. Plus, we're giving away Blast One's exclusive surface prep guide as a bonus to the first 10 followers who sign up to become an avid listener on the podcast. Get ready to level up your powder coater game.
Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Powder Coater podcast. We do have Jeff Taylor here today. He is from Blast One, and as you know, he's been on a couple of shows. I'll reference those shows. I think it was 14 and 15 where we go over blast media basics, and then kind of come back for a second edition, an extension of that, where we talk about CFM and, the size of your blast booth. So go reference those two, but just know that Jeff Taylor's here with us today. He's our resident sandblast media and sandblasting expert. Happy to have him back on the show. He's always open and available for question and answer for me and for you guys as well. And I want to so Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kim. Excited to cover the range of topics today.
Yeah, so give us like a brief, kind of just a real quick, in case somebody hasn't heard those two episodes, who are you and where do you work?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Jeff Taylor. I work for Blast One, and Blast One is a global supplier of abrasive blasting equipment and abrasive. We specialize in GMA garnet. It's an abrasive that we specialize in, so we can help people select abrasive as well as equipment for their sandblasting needs.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I first had you on, and it was because I found that your YouTube channel and your video, your blog, talks extensively about sandblasting. I mean, you literally covered every aspect to small to medium to large company blasting, outdoor blasting, and stuff like that. So please, I'll make sure to put the link in the podcast so that they can reference that as well and read all about that. You guys do excellent content, media, and blogging for sandblasting. So that was what attracted me to reaching out to you in the first place. But today I got a little gift from Jeff, and a lot of people know that I've talked about the Blast One. It's called a Surface Preparation Guide booklet. And I use this on my customers. I use this as a training manual for myself and for Ross and I, where it just takes you through the different NACE and spec ratings for rust and how you want your metal to look when it's done, or how it will look once you've blasted it just right. I love showing this to our customers just because they're always asking these questions, and it really helps me show them what their rusty metal stuff is going to look like after it's done blasting, especially when it has severe rust like this. So this is such a useful tool in my showroom here. I can't wait to show people, especially when they're kind of like, well, why does it cost so much? Or why are you charging me this much per hour for blasting and stuff like that? So I'm really grateful. I got these as a gift for working with Jeff on the first two, but Jeff has definitely been generous, and he sent us another 10. And what I'm going to do today, or just for the first 10 people that go to become a patron on our Patron account at RossKote.com. So let me share my screen here for a second. I'm just gonna, let's see, go over to share my screen, and I'm gonna show you how to become a patron. So just click that upper right-hand corner there, and you can start for as little as $1 a month. But the one that you wanna pick is the AVID listener. So let me go down here, and it's $5 a month to be a AVID listener. And if you sign up for the AVID listener, I will send you, this will be included. One of these booklets will be included in your sign up. So we already have an AVID listener already. You'll also get a coder shout out on a future episode, unlimited access to our download vault. And you're also going to get a trucker hat and t-shirt. And that's an embroidered hat. It's really nice. And then, of course, you'll be included in our list of coaching sessions that are going to be upcoming with some of our special guests that we're inviting for this quarterly session. So it's just where we talk about more in depth about powder coating and get your questions to your answers from other coders. So we're putting that together right now, but if you could go over there right now, I will include one of these in your package where you get your hat and logo tee. So anyways, that's all I wanted to say about that. So let's get into the show. One of the things we're having you back here for is that we are going to talk about nozzle types and the selection that there is to choose from and why it's important to have a nozzle type. And then maybe if there's time, we're going to get into properly sizing your air compressor. So go ahead, Jeff, get started.
Okay, great. So there's a lot to talk about as far as this topic goes, but just to introduce several different types of nozzles. I think the most commonly used nozzle in the blasting industry is tungsten carbide. And typically those are a brass exterior. Some are a hybrid brass and urethane exterior, tungsten carbide interior. They're your economical version. Very, very common, probably the most popular tip. And then we have what's called the ultra tough nozzle, which is a silica nitride interior with a urethane exterior. And then we also have a hyper nozzle, which is a larger 12-inch Venturi nozzle. It's called a long Venturi nozzle. And the reason you want to use something like that is it produces higher abrasive velocity. So we can dig into the different types of nozzles and how to properly size your nozzle to make sure you have enough air compressor for the nozzle you're choosing.
Yeah, do you have a page on your website, or like how do we?
Sure. So in our catalog, if you look on page 114, that's the blast nozzle, beginning of blast nozzles. And that's where we highlight the various blast nozzles we have, the pros and cons of each, and the features, benefits, and advantages to each nozzle. But on page 114, you have an air consumption per blast nozzle size chart. And
yeah, let me bring that up.
Yeah.
Actually, this is just your, okay, so I'm on your blast nozzles page.
You know what, let me make sure. Let me make sure this is a 2021 catalog.
Oh, hold on,
Nope, this is the old catalog. That's funny. Justin, what year is that catalog?
let me show you what page I'm on.
Can you give me a brand new catalog? No, I need the catalog. Are you looking at page 114 and it doesn't have that? Okay, so
I'm just on the website.
Okay, so go to let's see, blasting equipment, and go down to blast nozzles.
Yeah.
Click on that.
Yeah, that's the page I'm on.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Keep going down. Let's see if you have a chart on there. You may not have a chart on the actual website, but you should. Can you type in the search air consumption per blast nozzle? Let's see if it picks up.
Oh, is this it?
Yep. Click on that.
Ah,
There you go. Bada bing, bada bing.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm old school. I use the hard copy.
No worries. We found
Yeah.
it. This is helpful. Wow. Okay.
Very helpful. Yep.
Woo. Yes. Tells you everything.
Yep. So we can talk about blast pressure, and I know some people don't want to blast at a higher pressure for various reasons, but we can talk about the difference between blasting at 80 PSI versus 100, also 100 versus 120. And it does, the abrasive selection that you're using does affect that as well. Depending on what type of abrasive, you may not need as high of a pressure, but the rule of thumb is 100 PSI is your start point. Anything under 100 would be a loss in production. Anything over 100 would be a gain in production. And you might say, hey, I only have a 185 compressor. We have low nozzle pressure. Well, you could see here, if you were running a number 5 nozzle, it only takes 158 CFM to power that nozzle 100 PSI. So that is essentially how you can determine how you want to size your compressor, or what maximum size nozzle you should be using, because it's rather significant. For every 1 PSI you lose 1.5% production under 100. So the difference between 80 PSI at the nozzle and 100 PSI at the nozzle is actually 30% production. So just by simply going to a smaller size tip and getting a higher nozzle pressure, you may actually increase your production, because although you might have a smaller nozzle pattern, you have a significantly higher cutting speed. And the higher your cutting speed, the lower your abrasive consumption.
I'm trying to figure out like what the thing is right behind me, but oh, here it is. No, that's the receiver. I was just trying to figure out what we're using right now. I mean, we're kind of underutilizing, I guess. I don't think we're quite where we need to be.
As far as the amount of air, the size air compressor?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably the most commonly, you're not alone. The most common thing that we see when we go shop to shop is air is expensive, and air compressors are very expensive. So normally you're not seeing the 400, 500, 600 CFM compressors. You're seeing smaller, maybe 185s, or even smaller. So you can
I think that's where
look at how you could get higher pressure just by selecting a different nozzle. So that was a little bit of the reason why I thought it would be a good topic to talk about, is utilizing what you have and how to get the most out of your cutting speed.
Yeah, I think that it's like not the mentality, but just, you almost have to think over, like you have to go for more than what you need. Is that true? I mean, in terms of like addressing, blast CFM and having the right formula to the key. I mean, it just seems like it's such a simple thing, but it's not so simple when you start like delineating what you're, the equipment, I almost think like you need to buy your equipment or buy more than you need.
Sure.
I mean, is that generally?
Sure. A lot of people, so there's a couple of different things that you take into account when you size your compressor. And how do you size a compressor? Well, you look at how many things do I want to power off this compressor? How many things do I want to power off this compressor at the same time? Some people have compressors that don't only run their blast, it runs their paint side. So you got to look at that too. So you'll have an overall, you need to have an overall idea of how much are you running your hoods off of your air compressor, or do you have a separate pump? Mm-hmm. If you are running your hoods, that's 20 CFM there just to supply your breathing air. Then do you have an air dryer with a fan? If you do, how much CFM does that fan take? So we have 1600 CFM compressors dryers that take 65. Some of your smaller, let's just say a 400 may take 45. So you take into account how much CFM is needed for your hood, your dryer, any other air tools that you may be running in your shop. And then you look at what do I need to power the blast nozzle. A number 7 is a very common nozzle, and that is a 7/16 orifice. So we typically see between number 6s and number 7s in the shop. And you can look at the chart here that we had up, and you can see a number 6 uses 229 CFM at 100 PSI, and a number 7 uses 312 CFM at 100 PSI. So you can use this chart to help size what proper compressor you need.
Yeah, this is the key to it all. And I'll make sure to put this in the link, because I don't think we've ever, we had some other links in the last couple that were different. So I'll make sure to include this, especially but what if they're using something else? Like what if, is there other charts, or is this just a general chart? Like if they're using some other kind of media, would there be a chart, or is this just a general chart for everything?
This is a general chart for everything, and the theory holds true whether it's for most, whether it's steel. If you have a booth where you're using steel grit or steel shot, this holds true. You have a booth where you're using slag, whether it's copper slag, coal slag, this relatively holds true until you get any. And then you have garnet and aluminum oxide, other abrasives. Some abrasives are more friable. So when they don't hold that up to 120, 130, they start losing. Whereas garnet or aluminum oxide or some of these other abrasives are performance abrasives. They're designed to be used at high pressures. So you can really increase your production and your cutting speed by just adding 10 or 20 PSI to the nozzle. So depending on what you're talking about, yes, it does sway it, but it's a really good rule of thumb. And it does sway a little bit. It's a sliding scale. But for your general rule of thumb, it's a very good practice at being at least 100 at the nozzle if you're doing production blasting. Now, if you're doing a cabinet or something separate than open nozzle, you would use lower and different pressures. But this is your open nozzle blasting. Right.
And going back to the nozzles themselves, so I think we were on this page. I know that Ross uses the tungsten carbide. He's pretty happy with that one. Would any of these others help as well? And
so I could briefly tell you the difference between a tungsten carbide and an ultra nozzle, and then we can go into the hyper. The difference between a tungsten carbide and an ultra tough nozzle are a couple things. Tungsten carbide is a tungsten carbide interior. The ultra tough is a silicon nitride interior. Silicon nitride is going to give you double the abrasion resistance, so it's going to last you over twice as long. Another thing that's real common with the tungsten carbide is tungsten carbide is a brittle material. If you drop it, it typically cracks. And once you get a crack in your venturi, your nozzle, you got abrasive that gets in there and ends up boring that crack out, and they wear out faster. So you're probably going to get 200 hours out of a tungsten carbide nozzle, where you're going to get 400 to 600 out of an ultra tough nozzle. When you drop an ultra tough nozzle, it has a urethane exterior. It absorbs all the shock. It doesn't, and silicon nitride isn't nearly as brittle, so they don't crack. They're a little more robust as far as dragging them or dropping them in the shop. So that's what you would see. It'd last you a little bit longer. it's got better wear on it, and it's a little more durable. Now, moving into your high performance silicon nitride blast nozzle, which we call our hyper nozzles, they are about 12 inches long. They're what you call long venturi. They give you 30% higher abrasive velocity. You think, why would I want that? Well, if you have large projects that require a lot of blasting, it's going to give you, it's a great production nozzle. So if you have to get a lot done, you probably want to jump into this nozzle because it's going to give you a higher abrasive velocity, which is going to give you a better cutting rate.
Yeah, so if you're doing like a tractor trailer, or you're blasting that, or
large panels.
Yeah.
Something where you're doing large panels or any high production. If you're doing small lattice work or angles, or, you wouldn't want that because you'd have a lot of waste. You'd want to get into a smaller nozzle like a 5 or a 6. But it would be if you had a large amount of area to cover, it would get more production.
In terms of pricing, and I'm not, we don't have to get specific. I'm just talking about price ranges.
Sure.
So what are we looking at between these three?
So the tungsten carbide range from like $99 or $90 to $150, I think. The ultra tough nozzles range from $150 to $250, and the high performance hyper nozzles are about $450 to $550, and that gets lower and higher. There is a drastic difference between like a number 4 and a number 8. Number 8 is going to cost you quite a bit more than a number 4, so that's a good idea of where you're at to buy a nozzle.
And what's this one here?
So that is our Raptor large pattern nozzle. I actually don't have very much experience with that. We don't sell a whole lot of those. When it comes to high performance, we usually use our hypers, but according to this, it has a much larger pattern. Looks like a production nozzle of sorts as well.
Hold on. Oh, it's all right here. Sorry, production. Production in process.
It happens.
Okay, so then let's move on to like basic equipment setups for custom coders.
For what? I'm sorry.
For custom coders, like what's like an entry level package or an entry level system for a shop?
As far as your blast system?
Yeah, I mean.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go into, I guess, air compressors.
Well, we could talk about compressors. We could talk about blast pots, or the complete system.
Yeah. Do you have a page that is just like a package kind of thing, or?
We probably do. You're putting me on a spot a bit. I don't have my catalog down.
I like putting you on the spot.
Yeah, but if you're looking at our catalog, it's, gosh, how many pages is it? It's over 500 pages.
Post that you did, and then Ross said that's the perfect setup for me on that LinkedIn. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, sure.
It just had that, like, that's it.
No, we got tons of stuff like that. We got skid mounted set. I think it was a skid mounted setup, which had a 6.5 cubic foot pot, a 400 dryer, and it had the breathing box, everything on one. All you need to do is hook up your air compressor with the bull hose, and you're going to town. That's a really common package. We sell a lot of those. And what it is it's a skid. It has a very small footprint, and it's got a 400 air dryer. So it's cleaning some of the important things. Let me see the 3 most important things about blasting is having enough air, having dry air, and having good metering. And what do I mean by metering? How you meter your abrasive. If you get those three things right, you're going to be a successful blaster.
So when you're talking about metering, you mean dialing it to that right PSI and doing all that?
What I mean by metering is how much abrasive you use. Okay. So abrasive flows down the bottom of the pot into the hose and is pushed out by a pusher line. And there's a metering valve in between there usually. That metering valve opens and closes depending on what abrasive you're using and allows more or less abrasive. So getting your abrasive properly tuned in to where you're not using too much, but you're also not running lean is critical. So if you can get that metered properly with the right amount of air and dry air, you will be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have, I mean, just in general, our powder coating system, I think Ross has at least 3 or 4 water traps or air filters.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you wanted to go once
humid too. So we got.
Exactly. So there's 2 different types of air dryers. So you can use water traps, but if you wanted to go one up and get into a system that catches not only moisture, but oil, anything that could come from your compressor, you could get an ADS, which is a deliquescent dryer, or you could get an ACS, which is a coalescence. One has desiccant tablets in it that removes even more moisture from the air, or you have one that works off centrifugal force and just drip, kind of like what you have now, but a little bit beefier as far as a moisture separator. Either one of those would work for you.
Yeah. And then so basically, like, they could come to you, you know, they could email you or come to you and say, okay, this is what I'm looking for. Can you get me, like, you can put a package together, right? It's all
I can. What I would do, absolutely, 100. It's all modular, so whatever you want. And we're, you know, price conscious as well. Some people may have a larger budget than others. So we just want to find out, okay, what are you working on? What are you doing? And we will just have a very candid conversation about ways you can go. You know, if you have a very tight budget, if you want to go top of the line, we'll go anywhere in between that range for you.
Do you guys sell blast cabinets too?
We do, yes.
What page is that on?
Again, putting me on the spot for the catalog. I don't know.
Type it.
Let's see here.
Blast cabinet.
Yeah, you might be able to find it faster than me here.
You don't sell them.
Yeah, we do.
And you do sell the dustless paper.
I actually have seen them before in my cab or my tongues.
Wouldn't be collection. Well, it's not under that. Maybe we'll have to save that for another.
We'll have to come back to another episode and do something if you want on blast cabinets.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where they're at, but I do know we do have some in our catalog, and we sell them as well as support the consumable parts like the gloves, the nozzles, and the abrasive. Usually you'll have crushed glass or garnet in a cabinet environment, maybe A-locks.
Yeah. Okay. So the next thing we want to talk about is, I think that was on the list before we wrap up on this quick, kind of shorter podcast, is we're going to talk about beryllium and silicosis.
Right.
What is it and why is it bad?
Okay. So silicosis is a condition we know comes from being exposed to silica. And that's why you've seen over the last 20 years, people moving away from using silica. Mm-hmm. We found out that when that abrasive is propelled at a surface and explodes, it becomes very dangerous. And it causes a condition called silicosis. So if you're using silica as your blasting abrasive, you have to have controlled measures to protect your operators because it's a very dangerous environment. And if you breathe it in, you could cause yourself harm. So most people just don't use it because it's so difficult to keep your operators at the permissible exposure limits that it's just easier to use another abrasive and a lot safer. So silicosis is a condition caused by inhaling silica. And silica is not only in sandblasting, it's in concrete. So we're starting to see even the guys that are cutting concrete have to use water or have good dust collection to remove that dust, because silica exposure is a huge red flag for OSHA.
Yeah, and I think glazers, like people that work in glass, formulating and cutting glass and stuff like that, they're very prone to that as well.
Absolutely, sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of industries that is. I always like see the guys cutting concrete on the side of the road. They're working on the road or something like that, and none of them are, at least in my county, none of them are ever wearing masks when they're cutting that concrete and stuff. It's
a big plume of dust. Yeah. So you want to protect yourself. Yep, you definitely want to protect yourself from silica exposure.
Yeah. So that's, I think that's cool. Let's wrap it up today with that. Just to kind of recap what we just talked about is making sure that you not just like have enough, but you want to kind of overcompensate with your equipment. When you're, think bigger, not smaller. Start with your budget first, right? Because you can easily like go from 5,000 to 10,000 really fast, right? With your equipment and stuff.
Oh, the air compressors, your largest purchase.
Yeah.
A 375 air compressor is, $50,000.
Right.
So
think about how much blasting you're going to do every week, right? So if you're a smaller operation, I know a lot of guys have the intro, they'll get the blast cabinet. I know for us, we never, at one point, Ross wanted a blast cabinet. I guess it always seemed like somebody would always like forget a part or do something, and then you have to put the whole suit on just to blast some tiny little thing that somebody forgot to drop off last week or whatever. And for us, we just kind of bypassed all of that. I mean, yeah, it's a nice love to have kind of thing for us. But at this point, he just realizes that it's just so much safer and so much better for him just to get into, get suited up, have that clean air and just go into the room, even if it's just for something really quick or small. I think eventually we'd like to have that. For us, that's kind of like it's just kind of like, yeah, it'd be convenient. It'd be a convenience equipment to have a blast cabinet. But I know that a lot of guys just starting up in the industry, a blast cabinet is kind of like the first go-to thing that they get, rather than build a whole blast room with the equipment and everything like that. So I'd love to have you come back and let's specifically talk about those, because they do come up in the group posts all the time. Okay. What do I get? Where do I get it? How do I get it? But really, the budget, estimating your needs, and then making sure that you have every bit of the equipment that you need. I mean, it all comes in varying sizes, strength, various sizes and prices when you put together a quote. But like the regulator one, that we don't have that. Like that he doesn't have that on the pot. So we could pretty much get one, we need one of those actually to kind of maybe, because his is simple, but it's bigger. So we went for the bigger, but not sophisticated. So it's really just a variable thing. And
sure.
Knowing it all. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming back today. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Cam.
And we'll get you back on soon enough. I know it was kind of a hectic day for you, and I appreciate you kind of sliding us in today. Again, if you want to get a booklet, Jeff's company has really done a very nice thing and sent me 10 of these. So if you want to go to the support page, sign up to be an AVID listener, and you'll get one of these with your t-shirt and your hat. So first 10, I only have 10 of these. So It's just going to happen for the first 10 people that sign up for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim.
All right. Have a great day.
All right, you too. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.